Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode I'm going to recount the dumbest vampire session I've ever had the misfortune of running. This one happened almost a decade ago, and given that it all went awry because of a single stubborn player in a fraction of a second, it can happen to even the most experienced of storytellers. Let's go! I had 3 players in this group, and the chronicle had already been going on for quite a few months without issues. It really had been a pleasure running the game for this group up to this particular session. The story was a go-to, one of my classics for games set close to home, and the protagonists got involved with some pretty important Tzimisce independents who wanted to reenact Koldunic rites on Kupala's night. For that purpose, the pack, I think it's safe to call it that, the pack of protagonists traveled to Sarmizegetusa on a certain special night of June, well-fed and ready to take on the spawn of Kupala, since the point of their presence there was to assist these Koldun with their rituals. Now, unbeknownst to them, a very brave coterie of Tremere got wind of this little gathering and decided to make a name for themselves by attacking the fiends when they are most distracted while performing their sacred rites. Beautiful. It was a clear summer night when the characters got out of their vehicles and followed the path through the forest on foot all the way to Sarmizegetusa Regia, where the ruins of the Dacian fortress awaited in silence. By the time they reached their destination, the sky had darkened considerably. Rain clouds had appeared, almost out of nowhere. But hey, a little rain isn't going to deter them from banishing the corruption and spawn of Kupala, right? While the fiends are preparing their ritual, our protagonists are observing from further away and keeping their eyes open for any signs of trouble. The winds seem to be picking up and the clouds getting even darker, but other than that, all good. So the Koldun begin their ceremony. Shortly after, the protagonists notice a cloaked figure coming out from the darkness beyond the tree line and into the clearing where the ruins are. Whatever this person says in a language that sounds like Latin, it makes the vitae simply pour out in a torrent from one of the fiend's body and rapidly slither through the grass towards this cloaked figure who proceeds to absorb the vitae through its skin. Before the others get to react, more cloaked figures can be seen lurking right near the tree line at the edge of the clearing. The unprepared and exsanguinated Koldun falls into torpor before everyone's eyes. Flames start flying out of nowhere, setting fire to undead and mortal servants alike. Some shapes can be seen flying amidst the trees. Merciful heavens, the Tremere are attacking. It's an ambush. The younger fiends and their servants are dropping one by one. This is bad. Roll initiative and let's get the fun started. So, all my players declare how their protagonists hide behind some stone ruins, some of them becoming unseen using obfuscate, while others simply drop and stick to the ground, staying low and out of sight while crawling towards the trees for better cover. They are open as long as they're in the clearing. Despite having retainers and some Schlachta with them, the Tzimisce are also just making a run for it because the Tremere clearly have the upper hand here. It's an ambush. They need to get behind the trees, out of sight, and regroup somewhere else before deciding how to deal with their attackers. And again, cautious players are activating Auspex or Protean so they can see in the dark, and they notice some of the Tremere are out of position, vulnerable to sneak attacks. But everyone knows warlocks themselves also have Auspex, so this is going to be a difficult encounter. Silence falls over the ruins of Sarmizegetusa as both sides try to out-ambush the enemy, resorting to a stealthy approach. One of the players even gets the jump on a novice warlock and manages to stab him into torpor with a hunting knife. So, despite the initial shock, things are starting to look good. With wise and well-considered strategy, the Tremere might just be destroyed, so the rite can continue as planned. I take the time to metagame really quickly and remind everyone that the Tremere used Theft of Vitae on the now torpored Khuldoon, just to make sure that my players understand. This is a serious encounter and the enemy is powerful. Warlocks can see in the dark because Auspex, they probably have a wide array of thaumaturgy at their disposal, including Lure of Flames and Movement of the Mind. So these guys aren't just some dumb Tremere fledglings, but probably a task force of sorts who know exactly where to strike and how to strike to take out as many targets as they can with their initial wave of blood magic. Great. 2 of my players get it and act accordingly, while the third one says, I'm just going to walk out into the clearing. We all looked at each other very confused, and I asked him the golden question. Are you sure? You've seen Khuldoon being drained of their vitae and sent into torpor just a few seconds ago. You've seen flames devouring both the undead and their servants who ran around, rolling on the ground, burning in agony before they just stopped dead. Are you sure? To which the player said, yeah man, I know exactly what I'm doing. Watch this. So I wait for him to declare an actual action, mechanically, because I'm hoping he actually has a plan. Maybe he wants to use a discipline, maybe he's preparing a dodge, something. Anything, please do something because I really don't want to kill your character. And he replies, I'm taunting them, waiting for them to throw their best shot at me. I don't dodge, I'm going to soak whatever they throw at me. And in that moment, having given up trying to save the session, I gave the player exactly what he asked for, as I think is only fair, really. What he didn't know is that those gathered dark clouds, those were controlled by the Tremere, using weather control. And they are perfectly capable of using Lightning Strike. I rolled lethal, 9 out of 10 hits, 9 health levels of lethal damage, Lightning Strike. And he rolls too, stamina plus fortitude, without spending blood for automatic successes on fortitude, without using any of the advantages the character had, no blood buff, no anything against all common sense. And he scores 1 hit. So 8 damage goes through, and I narrate the scene. As you stroll into the clearing, hoping to get everyone's attention, one of the Tremere notices you, yells at the sky and gestures in your direction. With a deafening roar, lightning rains down upon your head, illuminating the entire clearing. It goes right through you, scorching zigzag patterns into your undead flesh. And after a sensory overload, you go deaf and blind before sinking into torpor. Hopefully, someone can retrieve your body before the Tremere capture you or torch you. Luckily, your torpid body didn't catch fire. Alright, who's next? So, of course, like a lot of players looking to show off and failing, he got upset with me, saying I pulled the lightning strike out of my butt and that I was just punishing him, which clearly wasn't the case. I made sure everyone knew just how bad the situation is and what advantages the Tremere have, and I just proceeded to play my antagonists. What happened next shocked me and amused me at the same time. One of the other players who was very invested in the game and who's usually very laid back, he got really mad, really letting this guy have it, telling him in a variety of mean ways that he really sucks for not taking the encounter seriously and ruining the game for everyone. So then the other player also joined in and did the same, and they really let this guy have it, telling him all the times he had behaved like crap, not taking the game seriously. Now, because this player was very stubborn, and I'm telling you, to this day, I have no idea what his plan was. But because he was so stubborn and insisted that I had wronged him, the other two players said, "That's it, we're not playing with you ever again. You ruined this game for not a single good reason, you're out." My players kicked this guy off the game. And hey, had he been some stranger, this would have been all fine. We could have went on without him. But we were friends, and these other players felt so betrayed that they almost dropped the friendship too, which I really didn't want to let happen. So the game stopped for a few weeks, and it gave me the chance to at least try to bring the group together again. I was calling the other players, asking them to give this guy another chance, and thankfully they did. We all agreed to pretend like that absolutely ridiculous session never happened and just do the encounter again, which is the only time I've ever backtracked like that, and as far as I'm concerned now, the only time I ever will. Needless to say, it worked out and the story continued. It's quite strange because that chronicle went on to be so much fun, and it brought people together and showed them a good time. But this moment was just beyond dumb. And though I have no idea what the player was actually thinking, because I never found out, I think he was either testing me or genuinely trying to do something cool, which I do my best to help with as storyteller most of the time. I want players to have memorable interactions and fun games. But in this situation, I was given the choice between, obviously, visibly watering down the danger levels of the encounter, the authenticity of the play, which is something I absolutely don't enjoy doing, or staying true to the antagonists as written and prepared, which is always my preferred method. And it goes to show, in light of their success upon retry, the encounter wasn't and hadn't been imbalanced in any way. I used the exact same antagonist sheets and approach, and as soon as the player took it seriously, working with the group, the scene was great, and it had a little bit of everything. The shock of the ambush, stealth, emergency strategies, gore, empowering and destructive use of disciplines. It was awesome. This brings us to the lessons I learned from this experience. The first one is, being an asshole in a role-playing game can erode real-life relationships and friendships. I mean, it's not about the game itself. It's not that the game wasn't taken seriously because, hey, this could have been any other group activity. It's about the impulsive selfishness this player is showing, a complete lack of communication, cooperation, and consideration for the time and effort others invested in this collective story. Everyone else took the time to build characters and show up to these sessions despite their busy schedules, trusting both the storyteller and the other players that they're going to have a good time working as a troupe, as a team, taking the story seriously. And especially when it comes to playing RPGs with real friends, not just random strangers, how can you deceive and disappoint them like that? If this was a game with random strangers, yeah, you could say, hey, this game is not for me, and walk away. But when it comes to friends, it gets complicated because nobody wants to just walk away and never see each other again, but the disappointment is still very real. The second lesson is that players are considerably more responsible for the well-being of a game than the GM is. They have so much power over the other player's mood. I often hear people saying, well, if the players are bad, you can still save the game, but when the GM is bad, oh, it's over. while I don't disagree with that statement 100%, my experience has shown me the exact opposite. And the way this was revealed to me was by running the exact same story for two different groups, communicating with both in the same manner. The first group brought no energy to the game despite my attempts to raise their spirits. They were lethargic, disinterested, unimpressed, unresponsive, and while some brief moments caught their attention and pulled them out of their usual state, the game overall was a mess and very unsatisfying. The second group, however, was very excited and invested. They were attentive, responsive, eager to create interaction and guide the story towards a conclusion without missing out on details and intricacies. And of course, this game was enormously satisfying. I used the same descriptions, same characters, same roleplay and tone of voice, communicating my intentions regarding the chronicle in the same way for both groups. So there's something to think about. This might not just be on the GM. The third lesson is that metagame elements that are affecting the story in a negative way cannot and should not be resolved in-game. If a player constantly does dumb things ruining everyone's mood, sure, I can punish the character in-game. I can take away their ability to interact with the world or have things go badly for their protagonist. But if I do that, I defeat the very purpose of the whole game and make the player miserable. They learn nothing. Whereas if I talk to them openly after a session about what's been happening and explain the difficulties they are creating for me and for everyone else, I'm being honest. I'm letting them know their actions are having a detrimental effect, and I'm inviting them to work together in a trusting, genuinely collaborative manner. It really is the most mature approach. And in case anyone is wondering, that problem player is a very good friend of mine. We're still friends today, and for the making of this episode, I asked him, dude, what were you thinking all those years ago when you decided to go chaotic stupid on me? And well, as expected, he doesn't remember. He remembers something about Zimitzi and Tremere and doing something stupid, but that's about it. Anyhow, take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.